match was unbelievable. All right, let's not waste any time. This show.
December 21st, 1985 edition of NWA Championship Wrestling. The best thing, legit, was the opening video, which was just Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA hitting stereo belly-to-bellies in super slow-mo. It was all
Which
down.
I don't even know what the point of it was.
All downhill from there. They announced the Bunkhouse Stampede would be starting soon. Also, the TV title was vacant. Therefore, to crown it, there would be a 10-man tournament. Not 8.
10.
Not 16. 10. Ole Anderson versus Bob Wayne. Yes, Bob Wayne, who had lightning bolts in his trunks because apparently he's capable of great speed that was never on display here. Teddy Long was the referee for every match in the show. And when you think about it, Teddy Long had a longer career in wrestling than almost everyone. He was around forever.
Yeah.
Ole was great at squash matches because all he did was stomps and punches, but his stomps and punches were all very believable. It's quite possible he was just stomping and punching Bob Wayne as hard as he could every time, but regardless, it was fun to watch. And he hit a knee strike off the top rope and then he worked his arm over for like 3 or 4 minutes and then just put him in an arm bar, like the exact same arm bar you would see in every other pro wrestling match ever, only he had worked over the arm first and this was a jobber, and so he submitted. That was awesome.
Let's talk for a moment about one of my favorite things in all of professional wrestling, and that is gear. Do you remember, Vinny, when you had to get gear? Of course you don't. You never had real gear.
I was going to say.
What happened was we took you to Tacoma Discount World, and we found a gold velour jumpsuit, and we made you wear it.
Close to the truth, yes.
That's the history of your gear.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about my gear. There's a place called Stagecoach Boots, and what you would do is you would call them, and you would say, I want black patent leather boots. Here is a drawing of my foot so you can make sure that it fits. I want it to be exactly 12 inches tall, and I wanted to have wingtips or whatever the hell you call them on the back of it. You designed it, right?
Right.
Okay. So, Ole Anderson, old, bitter, angry Ole Anderson, called some man on the phone, and he said, can I get some red trunks? And make sure you put 5 stars on them. That was a request, because that's what he wore. Red trunks with 5 white stars. Why?
Because he was a star.
I would read a book if somebody went back and interviewed all of the wrestlers about what they were thinking when they ordered their gear. This other fella, Bob Wayne. Bob Wayne decided, I want some trunks, and I want 2 lightning bolts on them. Why? I don't know.
I don't have an answer.
Lightning bolts. I saw no lightning here in this match.
Oh.
I saw Ole yank his arm for 5 minutes, and then he yanked it again, and the guy quit.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I'm not exaggerating.
No.
That is exactly what happened. It was just one yank too many.
He reached his yank limit.
Yeah. Ole achieved his yank goal.
He did.
Should be on my thing right here.
Yanks?
Yeah. How many yanks did I have during the day? Not enough.
Clearly. Explain your bad mood.
Either did Ric Flair.
Tony Schiavone interviewed Paul Jones and the Barbarian.
I'm in a great mood,
He interviewed Paul Jones.
considering what I watched.
Jones said he'd been trying to get champions to face the Barbarian, but
The fact that I'm alive means I'm in a great mood after that show.
he had been trying to get champions to face the Barbarian, but they always had something else to do. That is a quote.
Your main man, Paul Jones, he really brought it today.
I had no problem with him today.
Oh, yeah?
No, I had no problem with him on the show.
Oh.
He ran in a raid for a while about how this is Barbarian's chance was going to win the title, and he was going to win.
I wrote, this was a great, horrible promo.
That's fair. Someone in the thread of the last show said Vinny versus Bo Dallas has surpassed Vinny versus Paul Jones as the top feud.
That's true.
Yeah, Paul Jones is retired. I won. Now I need to get Bo Dallas out.
Wow.
Nikita Koloff versus Tony Zane. Here's a sentence I wrote in its entirety. Tony Zane was a shitty fat guy wrestler.
Wow.
Yeah, he was terrible.
He was horrible and pale. Nikita was very bad in this match. He beat him up and clotheslined him for the
clubbered
pin.
It wasn't bad. He was limited.
Highlight of this was Koloff is there with Ivan. And you know how guys give each other advice before the match? Mm-hmm. Ivan, before the match, goes up to Nikita and he looks at him and he puts his two thumbs together in fists and he makes a breaking motion.
That's right.
And then he got out of the ring.
That was his advice.
That was his fucking advice. Break the man.
Break him.
In half. And he did.
Yes, he did. And he won with the clothesline. Shivani interviewed America's team, which is Magnum TA and Dusty Rhodes. They may have both been asleep.
I know that people like to think that I never watched any wrestling. Believe me, I've seen plenty of Magnum TA. But honest to God, this is the first time I ever noticed his head. Was it worse than ever today, or is it just me?
It was very, very red and very, very, very scarred.
Oh, my God.
This man shed much blood for the sport. So all they really had to say was that Magnum was being U.S. champ and Dusty was going to be TV champ, and that was it. This is not the best promo I ever saw.
No, they may have been asleep. Maybe they watched the show, and then this was put in later.
That's possible. Barbarian versus Richard Dunn.
Or as I wrote, Dick Dunn.
To amuse yourself?
Yeah, I had to do something.
It's the third straight heel squash match, and one thing I noted, and it continued in every match here, whenever a heel was wrestling a squash match and he had a manager or a valet or just a second on the floor, he would always throw the victim out on the floor and take the ref just to tease the idea that there might be interference.
Yes.
So always have the fans watching out for it.
Yeah.
Even if the guy never really threatened it. There was always a potential threat.
And Paul Jones always threatened to threaten the man.
Yes.
But never actually did.
Right.
He would get kind of close, but then back away.
So Teddy Long, as noted, was the referee and shouting instructions at everyone. And it sounded, of course, just like Teddy Long. And I kept expecting him to book a tag team match. We'd mentioned last week, or whenever we talked about it, that Buddy Landel was a blatant Ric Flair ripoff in the same promotion as Ric Flair. Here's the Barbarian working in the same promotion as the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
I'm stunned they didn't just make him the third warrior and do the feud of the Koloffs.
Dude, the Barbarian was so great.
Yeah.
He was great everywhere. He was great in this match. He did a lot of grunting. He beat the man up. This Dick Dunn.
He was terrible.
He couldn't bump.
No.
He could not run the ropes.
No.
I'm not even making that up. He would run, and he'd put his back on the ropes, but both of his arms would be down.
I think there was actually something worse at this later in the show.
I don't know.
Because this, granted, his arms were way out of position, but I believe he was at least running. There was a guy who walked the ropes later.
Can't do a damn thing is what I wrote.
I wrote, terrible wrestler, couldn't run the ropes, would fall down at random moments.
That's what happened.
Barbarian won with a power slam and a diving headbutt.
I wrote, Barbarian hits him with 1,000 moves and wins.
That's also true.
This match went forever, it seemed.
Oh, there was much worse to come.
I wish Dave were here so I could say, this match went 5 hours. He would go, it was only 2 minutes. It may have been. It felt like 5 hours. That's the point.
You turned in this show much sooner than I did, but I did reach my breaking point. Shivani interviewed Tully Blanchard and Baby Doll. This is amazing. Tully is cutting a very good promo. He explains that in wrestling, you must be a champion if you want to make money. That's why we're all here. And now Magnum's got his belt. He's not a champion anymore. So to motivate himself, he's wearing the sweatshirt of Magnum TA's gym. So every time he looks in the mirror, he reminds himself, I got to beat Magnum and get my belt back. Then he mentions the TV title tournament. Says, I was a TV champion. I was the longest reigning TV champion of all time. I'm going to win that belt too. He's going off about all his goals. And Baby Doll says, and this is almost an exact quote. In fact, by the end it is, Tully, you have to win the TV or U.S. titles because, and this is the quote, I'm very expensive.
Yeah.
She flat out said, at best, she's a gold digger. Or she's a prostitute.
Yeah.
Or both.
And he said, you take care of me, and I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
That's right.
This was amazing.
Yes, it was.
Can you imagine trying that line on Raw in 2015?
I don't think that would go over very well.
Can you imagine if John Cena and Nikki Bella had this exact same conversation backstage at Raw?
Well, actually, I can.
Oh, Vinny, please.
Crusher Khrushchev versus Bill Mulkey.
Oh,
Bill Mulkey. The legendary Mulkey brothers. I love this, by the way.
Fucking Mulkey took the funniest and most horrible bump of all time
The
for
shoulder
a tackle.
where he threw up both his arms and then just turned around and dropped to his face.
I know the Mulkeys are like cult favorites, but this Mulkey sucked.
The amazing thing about this is you got two Mulkeys, and you got one of them in a tag match later, but you broke them up. You didn't have the Mulkeys as a tag team. You had them in one in singles, one in a tag.
There had to be 80 Mulkeys.
So I looked at
There
Bill
were
Mulkey.
Mulkeys everywhere.
I wrestled.
Yeah.
And to wrestle, I had to see a doctor who approved that I was not, proved I was healthy enough to compete. I had no heart trouble or anything like that. What doctor cleared Bill Mulkey to wrestle? He did not look well.
No.
And I don't mean that as code for any WWE performance enhancing testing. He looked unhealthy. He looked sickly and weak. The highlight of this was before they even locked up, the bell rings and a fan screams, "Ask him, ref."
He should have, and he should have just said yes.
So I just quit. So yes, he didn't have any idea how to do anything, including take shoulder tackles. All the Russians had the same finish. It was the clothesline. And you should have seen Khrushchev hit this clothesline because it looked like he legit hooked his head and threw him down by the head and then pinned him. And here I wrote, this show is tremendous. I was a fool.
You know, in 2010, Bleacher Report had an article called Why the Mulkey Brothers Are the Greatest Jobbers of All Time. There's no way whoever wrote this saw the match that I just saw here tonight.
There's more.
Yeah, a lot more.
There's a lot more on the show. Shivani interviewed J.J. Dillon, who said none of the announcers tonight were giving Buddy Landel enough credit for beating Terry Taylor to win the national title. So the next match was Tully Blanchard versus Vernon Deaton.
Before we get to that, J.J. Dillon, when he did this promo, this was when it first struck me like a ton of bricks. And I'll talk more about this later. J.J. Dillon was fucking awesome. The gap between the talented and the untalented on this program was astonishing, as we will get to later.
Well, speaking of untalented, let's talk about David Crockett.
We got to get it's Tully Blanchard and Vernon Deaton.
It's during this match. They're talking about the J.J. Dillon promo. So the TV title tournament's coming up, and they say, there's only 10 men to get in there. Buddy Landel may not be good enough.
Oh.
They buried Landel.
Yeah,
They
he's
buried
gone.
Taylor, and they buried the national belt. And if Landel's gone, that doesn't make sense. Vernon Deaton. I think it was a Joel Deaton too, but this is Vernon Deaton. He was very, very bad at wrestling. Like all the jobbers in the show. He was so useless that the only way to get him to take a move was to shoot on him.
There was a shoot headlock takeover in the opening minutes of this match.
Until he grabbed him by the head, and Vernon Deaton didn't go over until he grabbed him tight and threw him over.
Yeah. He was going to make sure he got this. My favorite part of this match was when Tully slammed him to the mat and proceeded to drop approximately 20 elbows in succession on the man.
Yes.
He dropped elbow after elbow after elbow after elbow. This is not like Dolph Ziggler. Dolph usually stops at 5. Tully didn't jump.
That's the other thing.
He stood up.
Dolph does it, and he builds up to a crescendo and does a wacky ass wiggle and jump.
No.
Tully just dropped elbows.
He stood up, he fell on him with his elbow. He stood up, he fell on him with his elbow. He stood up, he fell on him with his elbow. 20 times.
And I could just see what was going on in Tully's mind. He said, this guy sucks. And you tell him, just lie there.
Yeah.
And I will drop elbows on you.
And then at the end, his finish is a slingshot suplex. Which, when he executed it in one, I thought, those 20 elbows were a lot worse to me.
Oh, as far as taking a beating?
Yeah.
Yeah, the slingshot suplex is a weird move. If you put any thought into it at all, why does that hurt more than a regular suplex?
Well, you got the extra momentum from the ropes.
Huh.
But still, it's not as bad as dropping 20 elbows on a man.
No. The other thing I noticed here, and again, Tully threw the guy outside just so Baby Doll had the opportunity to cheat if she wanted to. The size of these television cameras.
Yeah.
Like rhinoceroses outside a ringside. Just massive. Shivani interviewed Arn Anderson, who addressed a couple of timid fellows called the Rock and Roll Express.
God, he blew away all these geeks on this show.
Yeah. He credited the Rock and Rolls for their teamwork and speed, said they'd never beaten the Andersons, and said he would be the TV champion because he'd be a champion people could depend on to have a great match. It was a great promo by Arn. And here.
This was where I snapped.
This is the moment where I realized I was wrong. This is a terrible show.
Sam Houston and Kent Glover. Kent Glover. Vinny, I realize for the last decade, we've been making fun of your wrestling ability.
Yes.
You would have been a god in Mid-Atlantic. These fucking jobbers. The thing that really struck me was, it appears to me that if you had talent in the 80s, you had approximately a 99% chance of making a name for yourself somewhere. Maybe anywhere. Nowadays, you can have a shit ton of talent, and there's a 99% chance you'll be a geek. What has happened to this business? Everybody on this show who had any modicum of talent was a star.
Yeah.
And everyone else was a jobber. It took this much talent to break out of the pack.
His finger's very close to his thumb.
Yeah.
People.
And you could apparently get a job anywhere in this country.
Yeah,
All
yes.
of these territories.
Yes.
Go to Oregon. Go to Florida. Go wherever the fuck you want. If you had any talent. Now you got all these guys with talent, and they're all mid-card geeks.
When you are trained to wrestle.
You hate Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas on this show.
Oh my God, Bo Dallas is better than... Bo Dallas, actually, you know what? I'll get back to Bo in a second.
He'd have been champ.
When you are trained to wrestle, one of the moves they teach you to take, of course, is the back body drop. Because it's a very basic move that gets a big reaction, and if you know what you're doing, it's actually very safe. If you don't know what you're doing, like me, it scares the hell out of you. And so when you're taking it, you're afraid of landing on your head, so you always over-rotate and land on your ass.
That's no good.
I did this 1,000 times in training until I figured out and I learned how to take a backdrop and land on my back and not die, and then it was fine. I bring this up because Kent Glover did, in fact, here on national television, take a backdrop, and you can tell he was terrified, and he over-rotated, and he landed on his ass.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, I think Kent Glover may have been the superior worker. Sam Houston sucked. Sam Houston was Bo Dallas with a better physique. So Sam would keep hitting him in holds. And Kent Glover would keep going to the ropes. And a fan yelled at Glover to start wrestling and quit playing the ropes.
Somebody before this match backstage said, Sam, go out there with Kent Glover and give me 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm. Houston yelled at Glover to stay in the ring and wrestle. Rope breaks severely frowned upon in the Mid-Atlantic territory. So Houston worked the arm for several hours. He was losing a test of strength to Kent Glover.
Go look at him.
Until he was skinny. He kicked his way free and hit another arm drag. And finally he won with a bulldog. What an awful match, I wrote.
Then there was a Flair promo.
Yeah.
And I was amazed because at first I listened to Ric Flair, who they trotted out at least 3 times and maybe 4 on this show, just to bring some life to it. And I thought, you know what? Flair really was like a god among all these geeks. And then I started to think, how much was he actually a god of pro wrestling? And how much of it was just a contrast from guys like fucking Kent Glover? Was he really that good, or were they that bad? The answer, of course, is he was really that good.
And they were that bad.
And they were that bad. Oh, my God, the contrast here.
First of all, Flair comes out, and he's being Ric Flair, talking about the best-looking guy and the best-dressed guy and every woman's fantasy. And he has, of course, always said this, always bragged about his prowess with the women. But they kept cutting the crowd shots. And of these women, Ric Flair was the hottest man on earth.
Not just that.
The women in the studio, they would have all thrown themselves at his feet.
There was a third interview that he did later, and he's giving out all of his information to the women. And you know, on Raw, actually, they don't do this on Raw anymore, but everyone remembers wrestling where there'd be like the good-looking guy in the ring, and they'd cut to the girl swooning in the crowd or whatever. Mm-hmm. They cut to this girl. There's no way she was 13. No way she was older than 12. I was like, really? That's what you cut to, director, when Ric Flair, who's 40, is out there doing this fucking promo?
Yeah. So he's talking about defending the title against Dusty Rhodes on Christmas Day. That's something to think about.
Hey, that used to be a huge day for wrestling.
Yes. That and Thanksgiving. So then on the theme of Christmas, he explains he is no Scrooge. And he takes out a big fat wad of cash. Says, Tony Schiavone, here's $300. Take your wife out for a nice dinner. And Tony takes the money and pockets it. Flair holds up $200 bills, says, Magnum TA, here's $200. Go get yourself some nice clothes. This should be a lot better than what you're wearing now. Then he holds up $500 and says, Dusty Rhodes, this is for you to get a first-class ticket out of Atlanta so you can escape this beating I'm going to give you.
God, he's great.
What a brilliant fucking promo this was. This was awesome. All right, so they have been doing the Championship Challenge Series, whatever the hell they call it. But the idea is this is the point of the show, everyone, where we're going to stop the promos and squash matches and do something competitive. This is what we got.
This fucking match.
Ron Garvin and Raging Bull versus Thunderfoot and Black Bart.
Oh, it went forever. It went 100 years. That's what I wrote in my notes. And I don't lie.
Fernandez, talking about guys with scarred foreheads, Fernandez was bleeding a minute in from nothing.
Nothing.
A wind came by and blew his forehead open.
Air busting him open. All I know is somehow, and I don't even know how, because it's rather plain, the Raging Bull has a worse hairdo than Enzo Amore. I don't know how he achieved this 30 years ago.
So they get the heat on Garvin for a while. Yes, Thunderfoot and Black Bart beating up Ron Garvin. Garvin makes a hot tag, and Raging Bull comes in, and this leads to not a comeback, but Thunderfoot tags out, and Bart and Bull lock up.
They started over.
The match over.
They started over. Vinny. They started
I know we've gone 10 minutes,
over.
kids, but we're going 10 more. Teddy Long shouting out instructions like, get him out of the corner, Foot.
Get him out of the court. Let me talk about Foot. Let me talk about the finish of this match, which you're not going to believe when I tell you.
I don't know how to describe it.
I can. Man's name is Thunderfoot. He's dressed like Captain New Japan. I don't have any idea why. We finally figured out why he's called Thunderfoot. It's because he loads the boot.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure you youngsters are thinking, what does that mean, he loads the boot? Well, you see, the referee, I can't believe I'm explaining this. The referee is supposed to check your boot before the match begins. He checks your right boot, he checks your left boot. He checks, like, the toe of your boot, I guess, to make sure there's no metal in there. So, you gimmick your boot by putting a metal plate in the back of your boot. And when you're ready for the finish, you tap your foot on the mat, and the metal plate slides to the front of your boot, and then you kick the guy with the loaded part of the boot, and you kill him. I know this because I was hit with the grappler's loaded boot and pinned in the first match of the new Portland Wrestling back in 2000. Anyway, Thunderfoot gets a tag, and he walks over, and
That's generous, but go ahead.
Dramatically begins to load his boot. He starts jamming his toe into the mat to let you, the viewer, know my boot is loaded. And if I hit anyone with this boot, they will surely die. He loads the boot. Manny Fernandez is right there. Thunderfoot drives the loaded boot into the guts and ribs of Manny Fernandez. And Manny Fernandez doesn't sell it. Because apparently Manny Fernandez was unaware he had loaded the boot. So, because he didn't sell it, Thunderfoot hits him again. Manny Fernandez doesn't sell it again, and then immediately there is a sunset flip off the top rope, and the match is over. 10 minutes I waited for that fucked up spot and that finish. When he didn't sell the loaded boot, I was like, this has to be a rib. You made me watch this match for 10 fucking minutes, and then he doesn't sell the loaded boot at the end.
It's actually worse than all this.
That's impossible.
Because when you say Thunderfoot tagged in, that's not what happened. Black Bart went to a neutral corner. Thunderfoot followed him to this neutral corner, then entered the ring, and Black Bart got out, and Teddy was confused and went with Bart. You're also overlooking the fact anyone who complains about WWE guys working the hard camera too much, you should all be forced to watch Black Bart do a long chin lock spot with his back to the camera.
All you could see
Like
was
a minute, all you saw was Black
giant
Bart's
ass.
back. Yeah, I went -2 stars on that.
God.
I think it was too nice.
I think.
Yeah, it was very terrible. This is shitty pro wrestling, y'all. Jim Crockett came out to announce Magnum versus Ole for next week. Flair interrupted.
Can you imagine watching the show the next week after this one? If I had watched this show as the first wrestling show I ever watched, I don't know what I'd be doing right now.
I don't even know what to say anymore. So Flair interrupts, congratulates him for booking such great matches. Liar! Ric Flair lied to us all. Said it was too bad he couldn't find an opponent worthy of Flair. Garvin was out there.
This led to the greatest moment on the show.
To a moment, that's for sure. So Garvin's out there. He just had a match. Flair says, look, buddy, this is my interview time. I'm the champion. When I walk out here, it becomes my interview time. You need to get out of here. Garvin says, Flair, you're running from everybody. You're running from me. You're running from Dusty. You're running from Magnum. He challenged him to a match. Flair laughed him off. Garvin says, I dare you to put your belt where your mouth is. I know you can't put your money where your mouth is because I know you already spent it all. And Ric Flair took the idea that he may spend all of his money. That is the worst insult you can say.
How ironic.
He was so pissed at this concept that he may run out of money. Bullshit. That pissed him off. Then Garvin walked away. That pissed him off more. So Flair accepts the challenge. He says, we're going to wrestle next week. And Garvin comes back and says, all right, we got a date for next week. And there's a pause. And then he says, and I am not making this up. Ronnie Garvin said to Ric Flair, but we won't be making love. We're going to be wrestling.
Yeah.
And they cut to break.
We ain't going to be making love. We going to be wrestling. Ronnie Garvin.
Now, I'm happy to hear that. I'd much rather see them wrestle. But why? What the hell?
It must have been Flair making a comment about a date.
I guess.
There's so much more on this show.
We're not close to the end.
You were sure this was the second show.
I was absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, convinced the first show had ended and it started accidentally auto-playing the next show somehow.
What's funny is I thought it was supposed to end at 11:30. It ended at 11:20, so it actually went by quicker than I thought.
Rock and Roll Express versus Randy Mulkey and Larry Clark.
Oh.
We got 10 minutes of arm drags as the announcers did anniversaries and birthdays.
Yeah, the announcers are wishing us Merry Christmas and doing the anniversary and birthday shout-outs.
We got a sunset flip finish for the second match in a row. And when Morton hit the sunset flip, Teddy drops down, and you've never seen Teddy Long count a pin so fast. So fast. He knew this went too long. It was time to hurry shit up. And on that note, Magnum TA pinned George South of the belly to belly in 10 seconds.
I could not even believe this. I was just like, finally a jobber who does not suck. And he gets pinned in 10 seconds. I was positive this was a rib. I was positive. Somebody at the WWE Network must not like me. And they edited together the worst fucking show they could possibly do because they knew we were going to do 30 years ago this week at NWA WCW. There's no other explanation.
This match was so short, they literally showed the entire match in slow motion replay. Let's see. Arn Anderson versus Josh Stroud.
I'll tell everybody a true story. Before you started watching Ring of Honor, I made Mongolian Grill. By the time we got to Arn Anderson versus Josh Stroud, I had to eat again. I went over and cooked fried rice. I had gained an appetite. This show was so long. And the last thing I wrote before I walked over there was these things. The first two things that came out of Crockett's mouth when Arn Anderson versus Josh Stroud started. Look at the muscles on this guy. Muscles. Look at the arms on this guy. What is with David Crockett and muscles?
He has nothing to say. He was a horrible announcer. His two favorite things to say were, look at him, and watch this right here. Those in every match. Josh Stroud in all honesty, outside of maybe Nikita Koloff, had the best body on the show.
Yeah.
So Arn worked his arm over for a while and pinned him with a gourd buster. There's the second match in a row where I began my notes with, how long is this show?
Only one more match, and this is the main event.
Shivani interviewed Dusty again, not the main event. Dusty's not the main event, I mean. And he explained that Flair and the Andersons were bad men, but he was going to beat them all. He sleepwalked through this promo, too. Ivan Koloff versus Don Turner.
I was so done at
In
this point.
the main event.
This is the totality of my notes for this match. This went longer than 10 seconds. Finally, the sickle for the pin. I don't remember anything. I didn't care. I was done.
Turner's the guy I talked about walking the ropes. Shivani noted that Koloff was using various chokeholds. Turner was unable to take a swinging neck breaker, just fell down on the side of his head. And I haven't pinned him with a clothesline.
God.
In the last segment, Shivani's interviewing Flair.
For the third time. This was where we got the 12-year-old the director thought would be a great girl to zoom in on as Flair is talking about his prowess.
And Flair's talking about how he's going to be in the stockings of 8,000 women Christmas morning. And these women, including the 12-year-old, were just hyperventilating over him.
Christ, I would too after I watched this show.
Flair
The
demands,
pickings are fucking slim, Vinny.
Flair demands, stop showing the girls, keep the camera on me. And then just a second later, he said, stop switching cameras. I want to cut one into the camera. And so he starts to talk about Dusty and Dusty's leg. And he says, don't cut me off. And Dusty, I'm going to take your leg in. Woo! And they cut him off. They had a time cut. They had to get out of there. That's one of the worst episodes of a wrestling TV show I've ever seen.
I agree.
That
Like
was
in history.
so bad.
In history.
Going back over it. And like I say, 1 hour, nothing but squashes, it has a certain charm. 2 hours, no fucking good.
It's only an hour and a half, dude, but still.
Don't watch that show.
Dude, this better get better next week. This better get better.
If this is
But you know what?
this bad again next week, things will change.
Well, Vinny, as I said, we probably should not have watched this right after the Ring of Honor paper.
Ring of Honor is better than this
That was a big mistake.
in every way, at every point.
God. Cole and O'Reilly, and then this shit. Like, Jesus, what did we do? That's it, everybody. I am spent. What's my heart rate at?
Well,